100 years is not a long time. The Roman empires lasted longer than that. The British Empire lasted longer than that. The US dollar has only been the world's reserve currency since 1944, and that's 80 years. And in those 80 years, it has lost over 97% of its purchasing power. Now, I sit across from educated people all the time: economists, scientists, professors, and I walk them through the history of money. I explain what Bitcoin is, why it was built, and what it's designed to do. And in those conversations, not one person has ever told me I was wrong about the history of money. Not one person has ever looked me in the eye and said the fiat system is perfect and nothing will ever replace the dollar. Despite understanding the risk of fiat, they just choose not to hold any Bitcoin in their portfolio at all. This choice is rooted in a complete misconception about what a high Bitcoin price actually signifies. Because Bitcoin hitting $1 million is not the story most people think it is. Most people hear the number and imagine a lottery ticket, a get rich quick scheme. They imagine the person holding one Bitcoin becoming rich overnight. But that is not the story of Bitcoin anymore, and it hasn't been for a while. As a certified financial planner, I'm here to tell you that by the time Bitcoin reaches $1 million, that number is not going to feel the way you think it does. It's not going to feel like winning. It's going to feel like survival. Stay with me because we're going to walk through why the fiat system makes this mathematically inevitable over time, why most people still won't hold it, even after knowing everything I'm about to tell you, and what the financial planner approved move would look like for a regular household. Although this is great information, please remember it is not financial advice, for that should be done in person. All right, let's get into it. Right now, the median home in America costs about $430,000. Bitcoin is sitting somewhere around $60,000 to $74,000 depending on the day. Those two numbers are going to move together over the next decade, not because they're connected, but because the thing driving both of them is the same force. The dollar is losing ground, and everything priced in dollars has to rise in nominal terms just to stay in place. Think about what $1 million meant 2 decades ago. In 2005, $1 million in retirement savings was genuinely enough. You could retire on that, live comfortably, and leave something behind. Any financial planner today will tell you that the number you actually need for a comfortable retirement is somewhere between $1.5 to $3 million. Depending on where you live, your healthcare cost, and how long you plan to be alive, that number climbs even higher. The $1 million finish line moved. It didn't move because you got lazier or because the economy failed you personally. It moved because the purchasing power of the dollar has been slowly and quietly, deliberately drained. That is not an accident. That is by design. The fiat monetary system, the system every major government in the world operates under, requires inflation to function. It requires the money supply to grow, and it requires the dollar you hold today buy slightly less tomorrow. That is the mechanism. That is the engine, and has been running for over 80 years. Bitcoin was built as a direct response to that system. It was created in 2009, 1 year after the 2008 financial crisis, by someone who watched the government and central banks bailed out banks with freshly printed money and decided to build something they couldn't touch: a fixed supply, 21 million coins, ever. No government can change that. No central banks can print more of it. No committee votes on whether to expand the supply. That is a big idea. When every other asset in the world is inflating in nominal price because the measuring stick, the dollar, keeps shrinking. Bitcoin inflates for two reasons. The same reason everything else does, but plus one more. And it's a big one, and that's adoption. It is still a young technology, and a young technology that survives long enough to reach $1 trillion market cap don't stay young technologies forever. Bitcoin is now a $1 to $2 trillion asset. That is not a fringe number. That is not a meme coin or a speculative gambling sitting in some dark corner of the internet. That is one of the largest assets on the planet by market capitalization. The human race collectively has decided that this thing is worth putting money into. And it follows a pattern we've seen before. The telegraph was laughed at. Then it connected continents. The telephone was a novelty. Then nobody could imagine a life without one. The internet was for nerds and academics. Then it became the foundation of the global economy. Mobile phones were for businessmen and emergencies. Then a device more powerful than any computers for 20 years ago ended up in the pocket of every 12-year-old on Earth. Every single one of those technologies followed the same adoption curve. Slow at first, dismissed by the mainstream, then a tipping point, then total integration. Then the generation born after the tipping point can't imagine a world without it. We are somewhere between the dismissal phase and the tipping point on Bitcoin. And the thing about technology adoption is that it doesn't slow down, it speeds up. Each new network gets adopted faster than the one before it because the infrastructure to carry it already exists. The internet made mobile faster. Mobile made social media faster. Then the financial infrastructure being built around Bitcoin right now, ETF, institutional custody, corporate treasury allocation, the internet, the cell phone, is making the next phase of adoption more explosive than anything that came before it. I know that saying Bitcoin hits $1 million before 2035 feels like a delusional claim right now. I understand that we are in a bear market. Sentiment is bad. The news cycle is not kind to crypto right now. And when you're in the middle of that, the idea of 10 times growth feels delusional. But that is exactly what every person that bought Amazon in 1999 felt in 2001 when the stock dropped 90%. That is when every person who bought Apple felt in 2003 when the company was months away from bankruptcy. The technology didn't change. The thesis didn't change. The price changed. And the people who confused price with the thesis, those are the ones that sold. Now, although we are in a bear market right now, there is one more huge tailwind behind Bitcoin that almost nobody is talking about in the financial planning circle. And it is the one that I think about the most. $84 trillion is about to change hands. That is the estimated value of wealth that baby boomers and the silent generation will pass down to millennials and Gen Z over the next 2 decades. It is the largest generational wealth transfer in human history, and the people receiving that money are not their parents. Boomers, broadly speaking, are not comfortable with intangible assets. They grew up in a world where wealth was real estate you could walk on, gold you could hold, stocks in companies that made things you could touch. That comfort is generational. It is not a character flaw, it is just where they were formed. Look at who actually owns Bitcoin right now. Gen Z leads at 42% of all crypto holders. Millennials follows at 37%. Adults over 60 account for just 4%. The people inheriting this wealth transfers are already the ones holding the assets. When that 84 trillion move from one generation to the next, a meaningful percentage of it is not going to land in savings bonds and dividend stocks. Millennials and Gen Z grew up with Bitcoin already in existence. To a 28-year-old today, Bitcoin is not exotic. It is just another asset class, one that has been around their entire adult life. The demand side of this equation is about to get a lot bigger, and the supply side is still fixed at 21 million. What do you think will happen to the price? So here's the CFP answer, the practical one, the one that respects both the thesis and the risk. Major financial institutions like BlackRock, Fidelity, firms that manage trillions of dollars have begun recommending a 1 to 5% Bitcoin allocation within the diversified portfolio. That is not a moonshot bet. That is a measured, disciplined hedge against a monetary system that has a 100% historical track record of eventually being replaced. 1 to 5%. That's the range. For someone with a $200,000 invested, that is $2,000 to $10,000. Not life savings, not a lottery ticket. A deliberate sized position in an emerging asset with asymmetric upside. And you do not try to time it. You dollar cost average. You set a schedule, monthly, bi-weekly, whatever matches your cash flow. And you buy the same amount regardless of what the price is doing. You buy when it's up, you buy when it's down, you especially buy when the news is bad and your instinct is screaming to you to stop. Everybody wishes they bought Amazon at $10. I hear that all the time. But Amazon lost 90% of its value during the dot-com crash. It went from $10 to $1. It's easy to commit in a bull market, and it's easy to say what you would have done in hindsight. But when you have real money on the line and when you're down 90%, that's a completely different conversation. The only people who held through it were the ones who understood what they owned and had the discipline to manage the risk. Not willpower, not luck, education, and discipline. The discipline to hold through 70% drawdown does not come from willpower. It comes from understanding why you own something deeply enough that the price movement stops feeling like a verdict on whether you were right. The price is not the thesis. The thesis is the thesis. 1 to 5%, dollar cost average. Understand what you own and delay your urge for consumption. The fiat system will keep doing what it has always done. The dollar will keep losing its purchasing power. The nominal price of everything, homes, groceries, retirements, will keep climbing. And the generation inheriting the wealth of this country is about to decide where they want to store it. You get to decide which side you're on before it becomes obvious. I hope you found this useful. Have a meaningful day.